When a construction worker accidentally crashes a billionaire's arranged marriage dinner, he has no idea the choice he makes at that table will cost her everything and save them both. What happens when two people from completely opposite worlds meet by pure accident? When honesty collides with power, when a single father choosing integrity over millions destroys an empire but creates something real? This is their story. A story about what we're willing to lose and what we're brave enough to keep. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. Now let's begin. The first snow of December hit Manhattan like a whispered threat, thin and sharp, the kind that didn't stick but made everything slick and uncertain. Ethan Caldwell stood under the awning of a closed bodega on Lexington Avenue, squinting at his phone screen through the freezing mist that fogged his breath. The address glowed back at him, insistent. Aurelius, 7:30 p.m. Don't be late. He checked the time, 7:26. His boots were still caked with drywall dust from the site in Queens, and his jacket, a canvas Carhartt that had seen better decades, smelled like sawdust and sweat. He'd come straight from work because there hadn't been time to go home, and now he was standing outside what looked like the kind of restaurant that charged you just for looking through the window. Ethan pushed the door open. The warmth hit him first, then the light. Soft, golden, expensive. A woman in a black dress that probably cost more than his truck appeared from nowhere, smiling in that specific way people smile when they're paid to. Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? Yeah, I think so. 7:30? Her smile tightened just slightly. Name? Caldwell. Ethan Caldwell. She glanced at her tablet, scrolling with one manicured finger. I'm sorry, I don't see a Caldwell on the list. Ethan frowned, pulling up the text message again. He showed her the screen. It says Aurelius. This is Aurelius, right? It is. She tilted her head, still polite but clearly skeptical. May I ask who made the reservation? My buddy Dave. He set up a meeting with some contractor about a side job. He said the guy likes to do business over dinner. Bye. The hostess didn't respond right away, and Ethan suddenly became aware of how loud his voice sounded in the hushed space. A couple at a nearby table glanced over. The woman wore pearls. The man's watch could have bought Ethan's daughter a year of after-school care. Let me check with the manager, the hostess said, her smile now purely professional. Yeah, sure, no problem. Whoa, Samin. She disappeared through a curtain, and Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, trying not to touch anything. The floor was marble. There were actual flowers on every table, fresh ones, the kind that didn't come from a deli. A waiter glided past carrying a silver tray with 2 glasses of wine that probably cost $50 each. This was a mistake. He was just about to leave when the hostess returned, followed by a man in a dark suit with slicked back hair and the calm, unreadable expression of someone who'd thrown out better men than Ethan without raising his voice. Mr. Caldwell, the man said smoothly, I believe there may have been some confusion. We don't have a reservation under your name, but we do have a private table reserved for this evening. Perhaps your associate made the booking under a different name. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Look, I don't want to cause trouble. It's no trouble at all. If you'd like, I can seat you and you can wait for your party. The reservation is for 2. Ethan hesitated. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. But Dave had been insistent about this meeting, and if there was a chance at extra work that paid, he couldn't afford to blow it off. Okay, yeah, thanks. The manager nodded and gestured toward the back. Right this way. Ashant. The table was in a corner, tucked behind a half wall of frosted glass that gave the illusion of privacy without actually hiding anything. It was set for 2. Cloth napkins folded into shapes Ethan didn't recognize. 3 forks on the left, 2 knives, and a spoon on the right. A small candle burned in the center. Your server will be with you shortly, the manager said, then vanished. Ethan sat down carefully, like the chair might break under him. He checked his phone. No new messages. He typed out a quick text to Dave. I'm here, you close? The reply came back almost instantly. Where? Aurelius. Like you said. Bro, I said Aurelio's. The pizza place on 9th. Where the hell are you? Ethan's stomach dropped. Shit, you at the wrong spot? Yeah. LMAO. Just get over here. I'm already eating. Ethan stood up, heat crawling up his neck. Of course. Of course he'd screwed it up. He grabbed his jacket and turned toward the door. Excuse me. The voice was low, controlled, and came from directly behind him. Ethan froze. He turned. The woman standing there was maybe 30, maybe younger. It was hard to tell. She wore a long black coat open over a dark gray dress that looked simple until you noticed the way it fit, the way it moved. Her hair was pulled back tight, and her face was sharp in all the right ways. High cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes that didn't ask questions so much as expect answers. She wasn't looking at him like the hostess had, like he was a problem to be managed. She was looking at him like she was deciding whether he was worth her time. "This is my table," she said. "Oh, shit. Sorry, I was just—" Ethan fumbled for words, feeling like an idiot. "I got the wrong place. I'm leaving." "You've been here less than 5 minutes." "Yeah, well, wrong address. My fault." She didn't move. "What's the right address?" "Some pizza place a few blocks over. It's not— Look, I'll get out of your way." "Sit down." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Sit down." Why?" Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Because I'm tired, I've had a long day, and I'd rather not sit at this table alone. So, sit down." There was no warmth in the invitation, but there wasn't cruelty either. It was matter of fact, almost transactional, and something about that made Ethan's instinct to argue die in his throat. He sat. She took the seat across from him, removing her coat in one smooth motion and draping it over the back of the chair. She didn't look at him while she did it, and when she finally settled, she folded her hands on the table and met his eyes again. "I'm Victoria," she said. "Ethan." "Nice to meet you, Ethan." You too." A waiter appeared beside them, silent as smoke. "Good evening, Miss Langford. May I bring you your usual?" "Please." "And whatever he's having, yeah." The waiter turned to Ethan, who had no idea what to say. Water's fine." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "You don't drink?" "I do. This place looks expensive." "It is." "Then I probably shouldn't." "I'm paying." Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head. "I don't— Scotch," Victoria said to the waiter. "Neat, for both of us." The waiter nodded and left. Ethan stared at her. "You always this pushy?" "Yes." "Okay, then." She leaned back slightly, studying him with the same detached curiosity someone might give a painting they weren't sure they liked yet. "So, wrong address, pizza place. You were meeting someone?" "Yeah, a buddy. He's got a side job lined up. Wanted to introduce me to the guy." "What kind of work?" "Construction. I'm a framer, residential mostly." "You build houses?" "I put up the bones, yeah." "That why you're covered in dust?" Ethan glanced down at his jeans, his boots. "Yeah, came straight from the site." "Where?" "Queens. We're doing a gut renovation on a townhouse. Owner's loaded, wants the whole place redone." "What's it pay?" The question caught him off guard. "Why?" "Curious." "Not enough." Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Amusement, maybe, or recognition. "Never is," and the waiter returned with 2 glasses of amber liquid, setting them down without a word. Victoria picked hers up immediately, took a sip, and set it back down with the precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Ethan picked his up more carefully. The glass felt heavy, solid. He took a small sip and tried not to react as the burn hit the back of his throat. Victoria watched him. "Not a Scotch guy." "Not a Scotch that costs more than my rent guy." "How much is your rent?" "You ask a lot of questions." "You don't have to answer." Ethan took another sip, slower this time. $1,800 a month, 1 bedroom in Astoria. My daughter has the bedroom. I sleep on the couch." He didn't know why he said it. Maybe the Scotch. Maybe because she was sitting there like none of this mattered, like she was just killing time, and that made it easier to talk. Victoria tilted her head slightly. "How old is she?" 7. "What's her name?" "Lily." "Just the 2 of you?" "Yeah." "Where's her mother?" Ethan set the glass down. "Not around." Victoria nodded once, and to her credit, she didn't push. "That's hard." "It's fine." "No, it's not." Ethan looked at her, startled by the bluntness. It's not fine, Victoria said again, her voice level. It's survivable. There's a difference. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant hummed around them, quiet conversations, the clink of silverware, the soft hiss of something being flambéed in the kitchen. So what about you? Ethan asked. You waiting for someone? I was. They cancel? Not exactly. Then where are they? Victoria picked up her glass again, rolling the scotch once before taking another sip. I called it off. Why? Because I didn't want to be here. Then why'd you come? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Obligation. That's a hell of a reason to sit through an expensive dinner. Welcome to my life, Shem. Ethan leaned back in his chair watching her. She looked tired. Not physically. There wasn't a wrinkle on her, not a hair out of place, but there was something in the way she held herself, like she was carrying a weight she couldn't put down. So let me get this straight, Ethan said. You've got a dinner you don't want to be at, with someone you don't want to see, and instead of bailing, you show up and then sit down with some random guy who walked into the wrong restaurant. That's correct. Why? Victoria met his eyes. Because you're honest. You don't even know me. I don't need to. I can see it. See what? That you're not trying to be anything other than what you are. Well, Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. The waiter appeared again, this time with menus the size of small posters. He handed them over with a slight bow and retreated. Ethan opened his and immediately regretted it. There were no prices. That was never a good sign. You like steak? Victoria asked. Who doesn't? Order the ribeye. It's the best thing here. I'm really not... Ethan. He looked up. Stop, she said. I invited you to sit. I'm buying. Just eat. There was no argument in her voice, just fact. And Ethan realized that this wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Something he couldn't name yet, but that felt oddly close to mutual recognition. Okay, he said. Ribeye. The food came in waves, appetizers Ethan couldn't pronounce, salads that looked like art, bread so warm and soft it practically melted in his mouth. And then the steaks, thick, perfectly seared, dripping with butter and herbs. They ate in silence at first, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people realize they don't need to fill every moment with noise. Eventually, Victoria set down her fork and wiped her mouth with her napkin. Can I ask you something? Sure. What would you do if you had money? Ethan blinked. Like, how much money? Enough that you didn't have to worry. He thought about it, chewing slowly. I'd get a bigger place. 2 bedrooms. Maybe 3, so Lily could have friends over. I'd put some away for her college, buy her a bike. She's been asking for one. And I'd probably fix my truck. Transmission's been slipping for 6 months. Victoria nodded, like she was filing the information away. That's it? That's a lot. It's practical. Yeah, well, that's life. What about you? She asked. What would you want for yourself? Us. Ethan shrugged. I don't know. Time, I guess. Time to just be with her. Not always scrambling, not always one paycheck away from losing everything. Victoria's expression softened, just for a second, and Ethan saw something behind the sharp edges, something raw and real. What about you? He asked. If you could do anything, what would it be? She looked down at her plate, tracing the edge of her knife with one finger. I'd disappear. Where to? Nowhere. Anywhere. It doesn't matter. I'd just not be this anymore. Brusa itintekan. This? She gestured vaguely at herself, the table, the restaurant. This. Victoria Langford, CEO. The woman on the Forbes list. The one everyone wants a piece of. Ethan frowned. Wait, you're... Yes. He sat back, the pieces clicking into place, the way the staff moved around her, the way the manager had seated him without question. The coat, the dress, the watch on her wrist that probably cost more than his truck. You're that Victoria Langford. I'm that Victoria Langford. And you're sitting here with me. Apparently. Ethan shook his head slowly. This is insane. Is it? You run a company worth what, billions? 7.3 billion, last I checked. And you're eating steak with a guy who smells like drywall. You smell like work, Victoria said. That's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing either. Why not? Why? Because it means I'm tired. It means I spent 12 hours on my feet today, and I'll spend 12 more tomorrow. It means I'm doing everything I can, and it's still not enough. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I spent 15 hours in back-to-back meetings today. I fired 3 people, approved 2 acquisitions, and sat through a board review where 6 men twice my age questioned every decision I've made in the last quarter. And at the end of it, I came here to meet a man I've never spoken to because my board thinks a marriage contract will stabilize investor confidence. Ethan stared at her. You're serious? Completely. They wanted you to marry someone you don't even know. They wanted me to sign a contract. The marriage is just a formality. That's... Ethan stopped, searching for the word. That's fucked up. Victoria laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, but it was real. Yeah, it is. And you were going to do it? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. It's what they expect. Who cares what they expect? I do, Victoria said, and for the first time her voice carried weight, frustration, exhaustion, something close to anger. Because if I don't, I lose everything I've built. They'll push me out, replace me, bury me. Then let them. Easy for you to say. Is it? Ethan leaned forward. You think I don't know what it's like to lose something? I lost my wife. Not to death. She just left. Walked out when Lily was 2 because she didn't want this life. You think I had a choice? You think I got to decide whether to keep going or give up? No. I did what I had to. I showed up every day because my daughter needed me to. And yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it sucks. But at least it's real. Victoria's eyes were locked on his now, and something had shifted between them, something raw and unguarded. You think what I do isn't real? She asked quietly. I think you're doing what other people want you to do, and I think you hate it. She didn't deny it. The waiter appeared again, clearing plates, refilling water glasses. The moment stretched and bent, but didn't break. When they were alone again, Victoria said, What if I told you I had a way out? A way out of what? This. All of it. The board, the pressure, the expectations. I'd say take it. It's not that simple. Why not? She hesitated, and Ethan saw her calculating something, weighing options, running scenarios. Finally, she said, Because it would require help. From someone I trust. You don't trust anyone. No? She said. I don't. Then you're screwed. Victoria smiled again, but this time it was different, sharper, more dangerous. Maybe. Ethan finished his scotch, feeling the burn settle into warmth. Look, I don't know what your world is like. I don't know what it costs to run a company or deal with a board or any of that, but I know this. If you're doing something that makes you want to disappear, you're doing the wrong thing. And what's the right thing? I don't know, but it's not this. Victoria studied him for a long moment, and Ethan couldn't read her expression. Then she stood, picking up her coat. I have to go. Us? Okay. She reached into her purse, pulled out a card, and set it on the table. If you need anything, work, money, help with your daughter, call me. Ethan looked at the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Victoria Langford, CEO, Langford Enterprises. I'm not calling you, he said. Why not? Because I don't take handouts. But it's not a handout. Then what is it? Victoria paused at the edge of the table, her coat draped over one arm. Insurance. For what? For when I need someone who tells the truth. And then she was gone. Ethan sat there alone, staring at the card, the half-empty glass of scotch, the table that still smelled faintly of her perfume. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, sticking to the sidewalks, turning the city soft and silent. He picked up the card, turned it over once, and slipped it into his pocket. Then he paid for his scotch, against the waiter's protests, and walked out into the cold. Tyke. 3 days later, Ethan was up on scaffolding in Queens, nailing headers into place, when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. You gonna get that? His buddy Marco called from below. It's probably nothing. It's been going off for like 5 minutes, man. Ethan sighed, pulled off his gloves, and checked the screen. 4 missed calls, all from the same number, and one text. I need to see you. Tonight. Same place. 8 p.m. Please. He stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the screen. Marco climbed up beside him, glanced at the phone, and whistled. Someone's got it bad for you. Shut up. I'm just saying. When's the last time a woman texted you, please? It's not like that. Then what's it like? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't know. But at 7:45 that night, he was standing outside Aurelius again, snow falling around him, his heart doing something stupid in his chest. When he walked in, Victoria was already there, sitting at the same table, wearing the same coat. But this time, she wasn't alone. There was a briefcase on the table, closed, locked, black leather. She looked up when she saw him, and her face was unreadable. Thank you for coming, she said. Ethan sat down slowly. What's going on? Victoria opened the briefcase. Inside were papers. A lot of them. Legal documents, contracts. Something with his name printed at the top. I have a proposition for you, she said. Ethan's stomach tightened. What kind of proposition? Victoria met his eyes, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain, like she was about to step off a ledge and wasn't sure if there was ground on the other side. I need you to marry me. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. The words hung in the air between them like something physical, something he could reach out and touch if he wanted to confirm it was real. Say that again, he said finally. Victoria's hands were folded on top of the briefcase, her posture perfect, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw was set just a little too tight. I need you to marry me. Why? Because my board won't approve the next quarter's strategy unless I demonstrate stability, personal stability. They want proof I'm committed to the long term, that I'm not a risk. And a husband does that? A marriage contract does that. Ethan leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly. You're out of your mind. Probably. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know I'm broke. You know I've got a kid. You know I work construction. That's it. Victoria opened the briefcase fully, sliding a folder across the table toward him. I know more than that. Ethan stared at the folder like it might bite him. What is this? Background check. Standard procedure. You ran a background check on me? Of course I did. When? The day after we met. Ethan opened the folder. Inside were pages, printed reports, financial records, employment history, even a photograph of Lily leaving school with her backpack. His blood went cold. You had someone follow my daughter? No, that's from her school's public directory. It's online. That doesn't make it better. I needed to know who you are. You could have just asked. Victoria's expression didn't change. People lie. Not everyone. Everyone I know does. Ethan closed the folder and pushed it back toward her. I'm not interested. You haven't heard the offer. I don't need to. $5 million. The number hit him like a slap. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What? $5 million. Paid over the course of 18 months. The marriage lasts 2 years. After that, we divorce quietly, you keep the money, and we go our separate ways. Ethan's heart was pounding now, a sick, dizzy rhythm that made the room feel too small. You're serious. Completely. You want to pay me $5 million to pretend to be your husband. Not pretend. Legally, it has to be real. We sign a marriage license, file it, make public appearances when necessary, but otherwise you live your life. I live mine. And your board buys this? They don't have to buy it, they just have to see it. A stable marriage, a family man, someone grounded. It checks their boxes. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm the prop. You're the solution. To what? Victoria's voice dropped, quieter now, almost vulnerable, to the fact that I'm about to lose everything I've spent my entire life building because a group of old men think a woman can't run a company unless she's got a husband to keep her in line. That's insane. That's reality. Then fight them. I am fighting them. This is how. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process what he was hearing. $5 million. He could pay off every debt he had. He could move Lily into a real home, put her in a better school, Give her the kind of life he'd only ever imagined. He could stop waking up every morning terrified that one mistake, one injury, one missed paycheck would destroy everything. But it was a lie, all of it, a transaction dressed up as a marriage. "What happens to Lily?" he asked. Victoria hesitated. She'd be part of it. Optics-wise, a ready-made family makes the narrative stronger, but she wouldn't have to do much. A few photos, maybe a charity event or two, nothing invasive. "You want to use my daughter to sell this. I want to give her a better life. That's what this money is for, isn't it? Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like this is for her." "This is for you." Victoria's eyes flashed, just for a second, and Ethan saw the crack in the armor, the anger, the frustration, the exhaustion. "You're right, it's for me, because if I don't do this, I lose my company. And if I lose my company, 4,000 people lose their jobs. So yes, Ethan, this is selfish, but it's also survival." The waiter appeared, hovering at the edge of the table. Victoria waved him off without looking. Ethan stared at the folder, at the briefcase, at the woman sitting across from him, who was offering him more money than he'd see in a lifetime. "Why me?" "Because you're honest. Because you're not part of my world. Because when I sat down with you 3 days ago, you didn't try to impress me or use me or get something out of me. You just talked. And I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in years. That's not a reason to marry someone. It's the only reason that matters." Ethan shook his head. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can." "No, I can't. Because when Lily asks me how I met you, what do I say? When she grows up and finds out I married someone for money, what does that teach her?" Victoria leaned forward, her voice sharp now, cutting. "It teaches her that sometimes you do what you have to do to survive, that the world isn't fair, and you take the opportunities you get. It teaches her that her father loved her enough to give her a future. It teaches her that integrity doesn't matter. Integrity doesn't pay rent. It's all I've got." They sat in silence, the weight of the conversation pressing down like the snow outside, heavy and cold. Ethan could feel the pull of it, the money, the security, the chance to stop fighting for every single inch of ground. But he could also feel the wrongness of it, the way it sat in his gut like something rotten. Finally, Victoria reached into the briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the table. "This is the contract. Take it home. Read it. Think about it. You don't have to decide tonight." Ethan didn't touch it. "How long do I have?" 72 hours. "And if I say no, then I'll find someone else." Just like that. Just like that. Ethan stood, grabbing his jacket. "I need to go." "Ethan, I need to think." Victoria nodded, and for the first time she looked small. Not physically, she was still perfectly composed, still in control. But there was something fragile in the way she watched him leave, like she'd gambled everything on a hand she wasn't sure she could win. Ethan walked out into the snow, the contract folded in his jacket pocket, his mind a mess of numbers and questions, and the image of Lily's face when he told her they were moving to a bigger apartment. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Ethan dropped Lily off at school and drove to the site in Queens. The crew was already there, unloading lumber, setting up saws. Marco waved him over. "You look like hell," Marco said. "Thanks." "Seriously, man, you okay?" Ethan pulled on his gloves, picked up a nail gun. "Yeah, fine. You're a terrible liar, man." "I'm not lying." Marco followed him up onto the scaffolding, watching as Ethan lined up a board and fired 3 nails in quick succession. "It's that woman, isn't it?" "What woman?" "The one who keeps texting you." "She's not. It's not like that." "Then what's it like?" Ethan set down the nail gun, wiping sweat from his forehead, even though it was freezing. "She offered me a job." "What kind of job?" "The kind that pays a lot." Marco raised an eyebrow. "How much is a lot?" More than I'd make in 10 years doing this." "Doing what?" Ethan hesitated. "I can't tell you." "Why not?" "Because it's complicated." Marco leaned against the scaffolding, crossing his arms. "Let me guess. It's shady." "It's not illegal." "But it's shady. It's unconventional." Man, if you're thinking about doing something stupid, just say so. I'll talk you out of it. Ethan laughed, but it came out bitter. I don't even know if I'm thinking about it. I should have said no the second she asked. But you didn't. No? Why not? Ethan looked out over the construction site, at the half-built walls, the piles of debris, the guys working for $12 an hour because it was the best they could get. Because I'm tired, Marco. I'm tired of working 70 hours a week and still being broke. I'm tired of telling Lily we can't afford things. I'm tired of watching her grow up in a one-bedroom apartment because I can't give her anything better. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What does your gut tell you?" "What?" "That it's wrong. Then don't do it." "But what if I'm wrong? What if this is the only chance I get to actually give her a life?" "A life built on what? You gonna look her in the eye 10 years from now and tell her you sold out?" "I'm not selling out. I'm taking an opportunity." "An opportunity to do what? Lie?" Ethan didn't answer. Marco sighed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Look, man, I don't know what this woman's offering you, and I don't need to, but I know you, and I know you're not the kind of guy who does something just because it's easy. So whatever you decide, make sure it's something you can live with." Ethan nodded, but the knot in his stomach only tightened. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with the contract spread out in front of him. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the building settling. The contract was 15 pages long, dense with legal language that made his head hurt. But the basics were clear. Marriage duration, 2 years. Public appearances, as needed, determined by Victoria Langford. Compensation, $5 million, paid in monthly installments. Termination clause. Divorce after 2 years, no contest. All assets divided per prenuptial agreement. Confidentiality. Breach of contract results in full repayment of compensation plus damages. It was airtight, professional, cold. Ethan read it twice, then a third time, looking for the catch. There had to be one. Nobody offered $5 million without strings. But the only string was the lie itself. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. "Have you read it?" He stared at the screen, then typed back. "Yeah. And?" "I don't know." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Can we talk? In person?" Ethan rubbed his eyes. It was almost midnight. "When?" "Now. I'll send a car." "I can't. Lily's asleep." "Tomorrow morning then, 6 a.m. There's a diner on 34th. I'll meet you there." Ethan hesitated, then typed, "Okay." He set the phone down and stared at the contract again. $5 million. 2 years. He thought about Lily's birthday last month, when she'd asked for a bike and he'd bought her a used one from a yard sale because it was all he could afford. She'd smiled and said it was perfect, but he'd seen the disappointment in her eyes when she noticed the scratches on the frame, the rust on the chain. He thought about the nights he stayed up late, going over bills, trying to figure out how to make the numbers work. The times he'd skipped meals so she could eat. The constant, grinding fear that one bad break would send them spiraling. And he thought about the look on Victoria's face when she'd said, "I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in years." He folded the contract, slid it back into the envelope, and went to bed. He didn't sleep this time either. The diner was old, the kind of place that had been serving eggs and coffee since before Ethan was born. The booths were cracked red vinyl, the counter was chipped formica, and the waitress looked like she'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by any of it. Victoria was already there when Ethan arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of black coffee in front of her. She wasn't wearing the designer coat this time, just a simple black sweater and jeans. She looked different, younger maybe, or just more human. Ethan slid into the booth across from her. "You come here a lot?" "Never." "Then how'd you know about it?" "I looked up diners near your apartment. This one had the best reviews." "You looked up diners near my apartment. Like it?" "I wanted neutral ground." The waitress appeared, poured Ethan a cup of coffee without asking, and left. Victoria wrapped her hands around her mug. "Have you made a decision?" "I'm leaning toward no." She nodded slowly. "Can I ask why?" "Because it feels wrong."
Wrong how? Every way, huh?
Victoria took a sip of her coffee, then set the mug down carefully. Let me tell you something about my company. Langford Enterprises started as a tech startup my father built in his garage. He died when I was 23, and everyone expected me to sell. The board, the investors, even my own mother. They didn't think I could run it. But you did. I did. I took a company worth $50 million and turned it into $7 billion. I put in 18-hour days, 7 days a week, for almost a decade. I missed birthdays, holidays, weddings. I gave up everything to prove I could do it. And I did. So what's the problem? The problem is that none of it matters. Because the board still sees me as my father's daughter. They still think I need someone to keep me in line. And if I don't give them what they want, they'll take it all away. Ethan frowned. They can do that?
They have the votes. They've been waiting for an excuse, and my refusal to marry their chosen candidate gave it to them. So yes, they can.
Then fight them in court. I could. I'd probably lose. And even if I won, it would take years. By then, the company would be gutted. So you're giving up? Victoria's eyes flashed. I'm not giving up. I'm adapting. By lying. By surviving. So Ethan shook his head. I don't get it. You've got everything. Money, power, success. Why does this even matter? Because it's mine, Victoria said, and her voice cracked just slightly. It's the only thing I've ever built that's mine, and they're trying to take it. The waitress came by, refilled their coffee, and disappeared again. Ethan stared into his mug, watching the steam rise. What happens to me if I say yes? You get the money. You move into a better place. You give Lily the life you want her to have. And after 2 years, we divorce. You keep the money. You move on. And you? I keep my company. Is it worth it? Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I don't know, but I don't have another option. Ethan looked up at her, and for the first time, he saw past the CEO, past the billionaire, past the armor. He saw someone who was just as tired as he was, just as scared. If I say yes, he said slowly, I need conditions. Victoria straightened. Name them. Lily doesn't get dragged into this more than necessary. No press events. No photos unless absolutely required. She's off limits. Agreed. I keep working. I'm not going to sit around spending your money. I need to work. Fine. And when this is over, we're done. No strings, no contact, nothing. Up us. Victoria hesitated, and Ethan saw something flicker across her face. Disappointment, maybe, or loneliness. But she nodded. Agreed. Ethan took a breath, then another. His hands were shaking. Okay. Okay, what? Okay. I'll do it. Victoria exhaled, and for a second, she looked like she might cry. But she didn't. She just reached across the table and held out her hand. Ethan shook it. The deal was done. The next week moved in a blur. Lawyers, contracts, meetings in glass offices high above the city. Ethan signed papers he barely understood, listened to people talk in a language that didn't sound like English, and tried not to think about what he was doing. Victoria handled everything with the same cold efficiency she probably used to run her company. She arranged for movers to pack up his apartment, found him a place in Brooklyn, 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a kitchen that didn't smell like mold. She hired a nanny to help with Lily after school, set up a bank account in his name, and had the first installment of the money transferred before the ink on the marriage license was even dry. They got married on a Thursday afternoon in a judge's office downtown. No flowers, no music, no guests. Just a bored clerk, a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and 2 people who barely knew each other standing side by side while someone read words off a script. Ethan wore the same jacket he'd worn to Aurelius. Victoria wore a gray suit. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Victoria turned to Ethan and whispered, "We don't have to." "It's fine," Ethan said. He kissed her. It was quick, formal, nothing. But when he pulled back, he saw something in her eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. "Congratulations," the judge said, signing the certificate. And just like that, Ethan Caldwell was married to one of the richest women in the country. The new apartment felt like someone else's life. Lily ran through the rooms shrieking with delight, claiming the biggest bedroom, the one with windows that overlooked the street. Ethan stood in the kitchen, staring at the stainless steel appliances, the marble countertops, the refrigerator that was bigger than his old bathroom. Victoria had arranged for everything to be furnished, right down to the dishes in the cabinets and the towels in the bathroom. It was perfect, sterile, like a hotel. "This is amazing," Lily called from her room. "Dad, come look." Ethan walked down the hall. Lily was standing in the middle of her new bedroom, spinning in circles, her arms out wide. "You like it?" he asked. "I love it. How did we get this place?" Ethan's throat tightened. "I got a new job. It pays better." "What kind of job?" "It's complicated, but it means we get to live here now." Lily stopped spinning and looked at him, her face serious in that way kids get when they know something's off. "Are you okay, Dad?" "Yeah, sweetheart, I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "I'm just tired." She walked over and hugged him, her small arms wrapping around his waist. "I'm really happy we're here. Thank you." Ethan closed his eyes, holding her tight. "You're welcome, Lily." That night, after she was asleep, he sat on the couch in the living room, staring at his phone. There was a text from Victoria. "How's the apartment?" "It's good. Lily loves it." "Good. We have our first public appearance next week. Charity gala. I'll send details." "Okay." "Ethan, yeah?" "Thank you." He stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "Don't thank me yet." He set the phone down and looked around the apartment, at the expensive furniture, the high ceilings, the life he'd bought with a lie, and he wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The tuxedo didn't fit right. Ethan stood in front of the mirror in his new bedroom, tugging at the bow tie that felt like a noose around his neck. The jacket was too stiff, the pants too long, and the shoes, polished black leather that probably cost more than his old work boots, pinched his feet in ways he didn't know were possible. A knock at the door. "Come in," he called. Lily pushed the door open, already in her pajamas, her hair still damp from the bath. She stopped when she saw him, her eyes going wide. "Whoa, you look fancy." "I look ridiculous." "No, you don't. You look like a movie star." Ethan turned away from the mirror, crouching down so he was at her level. "I have to go to a work thing tonight, Mrs. Chen's going to stay with you until I get back." "The nice lady who came yesterday?" "Yeah, she's going to make you dinner and help with homework. Shirts?" "Bah." Lily frowned. "Why can't I come?" "It's not that kind of event, sweetheart. It's just boring grown-up stuff." "Is it because of your new job?" "Yeah." "The one that got us this apartment?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. Lily studied him for a moment, then wrapped her arms around his neck. "Okay, but you have to tell me all about it when you get home. Deal?" She pulled back, grinning. "And if there's cake, you have to bring me a piece." "I'll see what I can do, bitu." Another knock, this time from the front door. Ethan stood, straightened his jacket, and went to answer it. Mrs. Chen was already there, smiling warmly, a bag of groceries in her arms. "Mr. Caldwell, you look very handsome." "Thanks. Lily's in her room. She's had dinner, but she'll probably try to convince you she needs a snack." Mrs. Chen laughed. "I have 3 grandchildren. I know all the tricks." Ethan grabbed his coat. Not the canvas Carhartt, but a long wool overcoat that Victoria's assistant had sent over, and headed for the door. His phone buzzed. "Car is downstairs. See you soon." He took the elevator down, his heart doing that stupid thing again, where it felt too big for his chest. The doorman nodded as he passed, and Ethan wondered if the guy knew. If everyone knew. If they looked at him and saw exactly what he was. A fraud in borrowed clothes. The car was a black town car, sleek and quiet. The driver got out, opened the door without a word, and Ethan slid into the back seat. Victoria was already inside. She wore a dress that looked like it had been poured onto her. Dark blue, almost black, with a neckline that was elegant without being showy. Her hair was down tonight, falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and there was something different about her face. Makeup, probably, though Ethan couldn't tell what exactly. She just looked more. "Hi," he said. "Hi." She looked him over, and something flickered in her expression. You clean up well? I feel like an idiot. You look fine. That's not the same as good. Victoria almost smiled. No, it's not. The car pulled into traffic, and for a while neither of them spoke. Ethan stared out the window, watching the city slide past, lights, people, the whole churning mess of it. Nervous? Victoria asked. Wouldn't you be? I don't get nervous anymore. Bullshit. She glanced at him, surprised. Excuse me? You're nervous right now, I can tell. How? You keep touching your necklace. You've done it 3 times since I got in the car. Victoria's hand froze halfway to her throat. She lowered it slowly, a faint flush creeping up her neck. That's observant? I'm around Lily all day. You learn to spot tells. Well, maybe I am a little nervous. Why? This is your world. That's exactly why. Ethan turned to look at her fully. You want to explain that? Victoria was quiet for a moment, her eyes fixed on something outside the window. These people have known me since I was a kid. They watched me grow up, watched me take over my father's company, watched me fight for every inch of respect. And now I'm showing up with a husband they've never heard of, a construction worker, someone who doesn't belong. So why bring me? Because I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Not in this. Her voice was flat, final. Tonight, you meet the board. You meet the investors. You smile. You shake hands. You play the part. And if we're lucky, they buy it long enough for me to stabilize the company. And if they don't? Victoria finally looked at him, and her eyes were hard. Then we both lose. Bam osmachomihits. The car turned onto Fifth Avenue, slowing as it approached a building lit up like a cathedral. Photographers lined the sidewalk, cameras flashing even though no one was there yet. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the doors, and men in tuxedos stood at attention like sentries. Ethan's stomach dropped. This is the charity thing? This is the charity thing. There's press. Of course there's press. That's the point. You didn't mention press. I assumed you'd figured it out. Well, I didn't. The car stopped. A valet opened Victoria's door and she stepped out smoothly, her face shifting into something polished and unreadable. The cameras exploded in a storm of light. Ethan sat frozen in the back seat. Victoria leaned back in, her voice low. Ethan, we have to do this. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Just follow my lead. She held out her hand. Ethan stared at it for a long second, then took it. The moment he stepped onto the red carpet, the world went white. Flashes everywhere, voices shouting over each other, a dozen questions thrown at once. Victoria, who's the date? Is this the mystery husband? How long have you been married? What's his name? Victoria didn't stop walking. She held Ethan's hand firmly, her smile perfect, her posture perfect, everything about her calibrated to project confidence. Ethan tried to match her stride, but his legs felt like wood. They reached the doors, and the noise cut off as they stepped inside. The lobby was all marble and gold, chandeliers hanging like frozen fireworks. People in evening wear clustered in groups, champagne glasses in hand, voices low and smooth. The air smelled like expensive perfume and money. Okay? Victoria murmured. No. Fake it, sit. A man in a gray suit approached, older, silver-haired, with the kind of face that had probably been handsome once, but was now just sharp. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Victoria, lovely to see you. Richard, you look well. And this must be the famous Ethan Caldwell. Ethan shook his hand. The man's grip was firm, testing. Nice to meet you, my... Yes, Bachamchi. Quite the surprise, you know. We didn't even know Victoria was seeing anyone, and suddenly she's married. Richard's smile widened, very sudden. When you know, Victoria said smoothly. Indeed. And what is it you do, Ethan? I'm in construction. Construction? How practical. It pays the bills. Richard's eyes flicked to Victoria, then back to Ethan. I'm sure it does. Well, congratulations to you both. I look forward to getting to know you better. He moved off into this crowd, and Ethan exhaled slowly. That's Richard Colburn, Victoria said quietly. He's on the board. He's also the one who pushed hardest for my removal.
He seems like a dick.
He is.
So why are we here?
Because I need him to see that I'm stable, that I'm not a risk. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Come on, there are more. The next hour was a parade of faces and names Ethan forgot the second he heard them. Investors, board members, politicians, celebrities, all of them smiling, all of them asking questions that felt like traps.
Where did you two meet? How long have you known each other? What do you think of Victoria's work?
Ethan stuck to the script Victoria had drilled into him during the car ride. They'd met through mutual friends. They'd been seeing each other quietly for a few months. The wedding was small, private, just the two of them. He thought Victoria was brilliant. He was proud of her. None of it was true, but he said it anyway, and every word felt like swallowing glass. They ended up at a table near the front of the ballroom, surrounded by people Ethan didn't know. Dinner was served, tiny portions of food that looked like art and tasted like nothing. Speeches were made. A video played about the charity, something to do with education and underserved communities. Ethan barely heard it. Across the table, a woman in diamonds leaned toward Victoria. So tell me, darling, how did you manage to keep this man a secret for so long? Victoria smiled. I'm very good at keeping secrets. Clearly, he's quite a catch. I think so. The woman turned her attention to Ethan. And you, Ethan, what's it like being married to the most powerful woman in New York? Ethan set down his fork. Terrifying. The table laughed, but Ethan wasn't joking. Victoria's hand found his under the table, but Ethan, her fingers curling around his wrist. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it was there. After dinner, the crowd moved into another room for dancing. A band played something smooth and forgettable, and couples drifted onto the floor. Victoria stood, holding out her hand again. We should dance. I don't dance. You do tonight. I'm serious. I don't know how. It's easy. Just follow me. Ethan let her pull him onto the floor, and suddenly they were too close, her hand on his shoulder, his on her waist. The fabric of her dress was soft under his palm, and he could smell her perfume, something faint and expensive that made his head feel light. Relax, she said. I can't. Try. Everyone's watching. Let them. They moved in a slow circle, and Ethan focused on not stepping on her feet. She was a good lead, steady and sure, and after a few seconds he stopped thinking about the steps and just moved with her. You're doing fine, Victoria said quietly. I feel like an imposter. You are an imposter. That's not helping. Sorry. She paused. For what it's worth, you're better at this than I expected. At dancing? At all of it. I'm not doing anything. You're here. That's more than most people would do. Ethan looked down at her, and for a second he forgot about the room, the people, the cameras that were probably still flashing somewhere. He just saw her, tired, guarded, holding on to control like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Why are you really doing this? He asked. I told you. The company... No. I mean, why are you doing this to yourself? Why not just walk away? Victoria's expression tightened. Because I can't. Everyone can walk away. Not me. Why not? Because if I do, then they win, and I can't let them win. The song ended. Applause rippled through the room. Victoria stepped back, her hand slipping from his, and the distance between them felt suddenly vast. I need some air, she said. Want company? She hesitated, then nodded. They left through a side door, stepping out onto a balcony that overlooked Central Park. The air was sharp and cold, and Ethan's breath fogged in front of him. The city stretched out below, endless and glittering. Victoria leaned against the railing, her shoulders sagging slightly now that no one was watching. That was exhausting, she said. Tell me about it. You did well in there. I lied my ass off. Same thing. Ethan stood beside her, staring out at the park. How do you do this all the time? Practice. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They were quiet for a while, the sounds of the party muffled behind the closed door. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Sure. Do you ever regret it?
The company, the board, all of it? Victoria didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was soft. Every day. Then why keep going? No.
Because it's mine. And I don't know how to be anything else. Ethan turned to look at her. That's sad. I know. You deserve better. She laughed, but it was hollow. Do I? Yeah, you do. Victoria met his eyes, and something passed between them, something raw and unspoken. For a moment, Ethan thought she might say something real, something that mattered. But then her phone buzzed and the moment broke. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. What is it? Ethan asked. The board. They're calling an emergency meeting. When? Tomorrow morning. What for? Victoria's hand tightened around the phone. Richard's pushing for a vote. He wants me out. Can he do that? If he has the votes, yes. And does he? I don't know. She looked at Ethan, and for the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. But if tonight didn't work, if they don't believe this, then he might. Ethan felt the weight of it settle over him like the snow that had started falling again, light and relentless. What do we do? We go back inside. We finish the night. We make sure everyone sees us together, happy, stable. She straightened, pulling her armor back on. And we hope it's enough. They went back inside. They went. The rest of the night passed in a haze. More hands to shake, more smiles to fake, more questions to deflect. Ethan felt like he was watching himself from a distance, playing a role in a story he didn't understand. By the time they got back to the car, it was past midnight. Victoria leaned her head against the window, her eyes closed, her face drawn. You okay? Ethan asked. No. What happens if they vote you out? Check. I lose everything. The company, my position, my credibility. They'll install someone else as CEO, probably Richard, and I'll be lucky if they let me stay on as a consultant. And the money? The $5 million I'm getting paid? Victoria opened her eyes, looking at him. Gone. The contract's contingent on me remaining CEO. If I'm removed, the payments stop. Ethan's stomach turned. You didn't tell me that. I didn't think it would matter. Of course it matters. Why? You said you didn't even want the money. I didn't, but I took it. And now Lily's in a new school, a new apartment, a new life. If this falls apart, it won't. You don't know that. Victoria sat up, her eyes sharp again. You're right. I don't. But I'm going to fight like hell to make sure it doesn't. The car pulled up to Ethan's building. He reached for the door handle. The car pulled up too, then stopped. What time's the meeting tomorrow? 9 a.m. You want me there? Go. Victoria looked surprised. You'd come? I'm your husband, aren't I? At least on paper. Something shifted in her expression. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Ethan got out of the car, but before he closed the door, Victoria leaned forward. Ethan? He turned back. I'm sorry, she said, for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me. I signed the contract. Still. Ethan nodded, then closed the door. The car pulled away and he stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights disappear into the night. Upstairs, Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, and Lily was curled up in her bed, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Ethan stood in the doorway of her room, watching her breathe, and felt the full weight of what he'd done. He'd sold his integrity for money. He'd built a life on a lie. And now, if Victoria lost tomorrow, it would all come crashing down. But worse than that, worse than the money, worse than the apartment, worse than any of it, was the realization that somewhere along the way, he'd started to care. Not about the contract, not about the board or the company or the empire, about her. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. He went to bed but didn't sleep. Instead, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what the hell he was going to do. Morning came too fast. Ethan woke to the sound of Lily singing in the kitchen, something off-key and cheerful that cut through the fog in his head. He rolled off the couch. He still hadn't gotten used to sleeping in a real bed. It felt too soft, too wrong, and shuffled into the kitchen. Lily was at the counter, pouring cereal into a bowl with the intense concentration of someone defusing a bomb. Morning, Dad. Morning, sweetheart. You were out late. Yeah, work thing ran long. Was there cake? Ethan blinked. What? You said if there was cake, you'd bring me a piece. Oh, right, no cake, sorry. Lily shrugged, unbothered, and took her bowl to the table. Ethan poured himself coffee, real coffee, from a machine that probably cost more than his first car, and checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Victoria. 2 texts. Board meeting moved up to 8 a.m. Can you be there, please? He looked at the time. 6:47. He texted back. Where? The response came immediately. Langford Enterprises. 52nd and Park. 20th floor. Security will have your name. Okay. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. He set the phone down and drank his coffee in silence, watching Lily eat her cereal. She was humming now, swinging her legs under the chair, completely oblivious to the fact that her life might be about to fall apart. You have school today? He asked. Uh-huh. Mrs. Chen's picking me up at 8:15. Good. Be good for her, okay? Ooh, I'm always good. Yeah, you are. Lily looked up at him, her face suddenly serious. Dad? Yeah? Are you okay? You look sad. Ethan forced a smile. I'm fine, just tired. You're always tired. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're old. You're not old. Tell that to my back. Lily giggled, and the sound made something in Ethan's chest ache. He kissed her on the head, grabbed his coat, and left. The subway was packed, bodies pressed together in the morning rush. Ethan stood near the door, gripping the pole, trying not to think about what he was walking into. A boardroom full of people who'd spent their entire lives in rooms like that, making decisions that affected thousands of people, millions of dollars. And him, a guy who nailed boards together for a living, about to sit in on a meeting that would determine whether his fake marriage had been convincing enough to save a company he knew nothing about. It was insane. He got off at 51st, walked the 2 blocks to the Langford building, and stood outside for a moment, staring up at the glass tower that disappeared into the low clouds. The lobby was all marble and steel, security guards in suits stationed at every entrance. Ethan walked up to the desk, feeling every eye in the place turn toward him. Ethan Caldwell, he said. I'm here for the board meeting. The guard checked his computer, nodded, and handed Ethan a visitor badge. 20th floor, elevators are to your right. The elevator ride felt like it took an hour. When the doors finally opened, a woman in a sharp black suit was waiting. Mr. Caldwell? Yeah. I'm Jennifer, Miss Langford's assistant, if you'll follow me. She led him down a hallway lined with glass-walled offices, each one filled with people who looked busy and important. At the end of the hall was a set of double doors. Jennifer pushed them open without knocking. The boardroom was massive. A long table stretched down the center, surrounded by leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, and seated around the table were a dozen people in expensive suits, all of them turning to look at Ethan as he walked in. Victoria was at the head of the table, standing, her hands resting on the back of her chair. She looked pale but composed, her hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. When she saw Ethan, something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe, or surprise. Ethan, she said, thank you for coming. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Richard Colburn was seated halfway down the table, his arms crossed, his mouth set in a thin line. He glanced at Ethan, then at Victoria. Is there a reason your husband is joining us for a board meeting? He's here for support, Victoria said evenly. I didn't realize that was an issue. It's a regular. So is calling an emergency meeting at 8 in the morning. Richard's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Victoria gestured to an empty chair beside her. Ethan, please, sit. He sat, feeling like he was about to be cross-examined. The rest of the board was watching him, some curious, some skeptical, all of them calculating. An older woman at the far end of the table leaned forward. Victoria, perhaps you could explain why we're here. I'd like to know that as well, Victoria said, her eyes on Richard. This meeting was called by you, Richard, so why don't you start? Richard leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. Very well. As you all know, there have been concerns about leadership stability at Langford Enterprises. Concerns that, despite assurances from Ms. Langford, have not been adequately addressed. What concerns? Victoria asked, her voice cold. Investor confidence has dropped 11% in the last quarter. Our stock price is down. And there have been questions, legitimate questions, about whether the current leadership is capable of navigating the challenges ahead. The stock price dropped because you leaked internal discussions to the press, Victoria said. Don't pretend that was organic. I leaked nothing. Then explain how the Wall Street Journal knew about the merger talks before we'd even finalized the proposal. Richard's face remained impassive. I'm not here to debate conspiracy theories. I'm here to address the facts. And the fact is, this company needs stable leadership, leadership that inspires confidence. And you think I don't provide that? I think your recent personal decisions raise questions. Victoria's hands tightened on the chair. Be specific. Your sudden marriage, for one. The room went silent. Ethan felt every eye shift to him. My marriage is personal, Victoria said. Not when it affects the company's image. You kept this relationship secret, then announced a wedding with no warning, no engagement, no build-up. It looks impulsive. It looks unstable. It looks like I value my privacy. It looks like damage control. Victoria's face didn't change, but Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her breathing had gone shallow. She was holding on by a thread. Richard leaned forward, his voice lowering. The board has lost confidence, Victoria. And after last night's gala, where your husband barely spoke to anyone and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, that confidence hasn't been restored. Ethan's stomach dropped. Victoria's voice was ice. That's not a fair assessment, isn't it? Richard looked directly at Ethan now. Tell me, Mr. Caldwell, what do you do for a living? Ethan met his eyes. I'm a framer. Construction. Construction. And how long have you known Victoria? Long enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Richard smiled, but it was sharp. You see, Victoria? This is the problem. You bring someone into your life, someone with no background in business, no connections, no relevance to this company, and you expect us to believe it's legitimate. You expect us to trust that this isn't just a ploy to manipulate the board into thinking you're stable. It's not a ploy, Victoria said. Then prove it. I don't have to prove anything to you. Actually, you do, because as of this morning, I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, some supporting Richard, some objecting, all of them loud and sharp. Victoria stood frozen, her face a mask, but Ethan could see the cracks forming. He stood. The room went quiet. Mr. Caldwell, Richard said slowly, this is a board meeting. Unless you have something to contribute. I do, Ethan said. Victoria turned to him, her eyes wide. Ethan, you don't have to. Yeah, I do. He looked around the table at the faces staring back at him and took a breath. You want to know if this marriage is real? Fine, here's the truth. I didn't know who Victoria was when I met her. I walked into the wrong restaurant, sat at the wrong table, and she could have had me thrown out. But she didn't. She sat down and talked to me like I was a person, not a problem. And yeah, we got married fast, maybe too fast. But not because she's unstable, because she's tired. Tired, Richard repeated, his tone mocking. Tired of people like you treating her like she's got something to prove. Tired of being questioned and doubted and second-guessed every time she makes a decision. You want to talk about confidence? She built this company into what it is, not you, her. And if you can't see that, then the problem isn't her leadership, it's your judgment. The room was silent. Richard's face had gone red. You have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe not, but I know what I see. And I see someone who's been fighting alone for so long she forgot what it's like to have someone on her side. Ethan looked at Victoria, and her eyes were shining. So yeah, this marriage is real, and if you want to vote her out, go ahead. But don't pretend it's because she's not capable. It's because you're threatened by her. He sat down. No one spoke. Finally, the older woman at the end of the table cleared her throat. Richard, I think we've heard enough. If you want to call a vote, call it. But I, for one, am not convinced this is the right move. Another board member nodded. Agreed. Victoria's leadership has been nothing short of exceptional. One bad quarter doesn't erase 7 years of growth. Richard looked around the table, his jaw tight. Fine. All in favor of a vote of no confidence? 3 hands went up, Richard's and 2 others. All opposed? 8 hands. Richard's face was stone. Motion fails. Victoria exhaled, and Ethan saw her legs almost give out. She gripped the back of her chair, steadying herself. "This meeting is adjourned," she said, her voice shaking slightly. The board filed out, some of them giving Ethan curious looks, others ignoring him entirely. Richard left last, pausing at the door to glance back at Victoria. He didn't say anything, but the look was clear. This isn't over. When the room was empty, Victoria sank into her chair, her head in her hands. Ethan sat beside her. "You okay?" "No." "You want to talk about it?" "No." "Okay, They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to the small war that had just been fought in this room. Finally, Victoria looked up. Her eyes were red. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did." "Why?" "Because you needed someone to. You barely know me. I know enough." Victoria shook her head slowly. "I don't understand you." "That makes 2 of us." "Oh, don't be shy. Darces." She almost laughed, but it came out as a half sob. "I thought I was going to lose. I thought—" Her voice broke. Ethan reached over, covering her hand with his. "You didn't." "I will eventually. Richard's not going to stop." "Then you fight him again." "I'm tired of fighting." "I know." Victoria looked at him, and something in her face shifted. "Why are you doing this? Really? The money's gone if I lose. The contract's void. You've got nothing to gain." It's just on names. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe I don't want to gain anything." "Then what do you want?" He didn't know how to answer that. He didn't know when it had changed, when this had stopped being about the money or the apartment or Lily's future and started being about something else. Something he couldn't name. "I want you to stop carrying this alone," he said finally. Victoria's breath hitched. She pulled her hand back, standing abruptly. "I need to go. I have calls to make, investors to reassure. Thank you for coming, for what you said." "Victoria, I'll have Jennifer arrange a car for you." She was already moving toward the door, and Ethan knew better than to chase her. So he just sat there, in the empty boardroom, and wondered what the hell he'd just done. By the time he got home, it was almost noon. Mrs. Chen was gone, Lily was at school, and the apartment was silent. Ethan stood in the living room, staring at the furniture that still felt like someone else's, and pulled out his phone. He opened his messages, scrolled to Marco's name, and started typing. "I think I screwed up." The reply came back fast. "What'd you do?" "Something stupid. That narrows it down. I'm serious." "Okay, you want to grab a beer later? Talk it out?" Ethan stared at the screen. A beer sounded good. Talking sounded even better. But what was he going to say? That he'd married a billionaire for money, and now he couldn't stop thinking about her? That he'd stood up in a boardroom and defended her like she was someone who mattered, and now he didn't know how to walk it back? "Yeah, beer sounds good. 7, see you then." Ethan set the phone down and collapsed onto the couch. His mind was a mess, replaying the meeting, Victoria's face, the way her hand had felt under his. He'd crossed a line today. He just didn't know which one. That night, Ethan met Marco at a dive bar in Astoria, the kind of place with sticky floors and a jukebox that only played songs from the 80s. Marco was already there, 2 beers on the table, grinning like he knew exactly what kind of mess Ethan had gotten himself into. "So," Marco said, "you look like hell." "Thanks. You gonna tell me what's going on, or do I have to guess?" Ethan took a long drink, then set the bottle down. "Remember that job I told you about? The shady one?" "Yeah." "What about it?" "It's more complicated than I thought." "How complicated?" Ethan hesitated, then said, "I got married." Marco choked on his beer. "You what?" "I got married. To the woman who offered me the job. The woman who's been texting you." "Yeah. The rich one." "Yeah." And then Marco stared at him. "You're serious. Dead serious." "Why?" "Money. A lot of it. Enough to change everything for Lily." "And you just married her? Just like that?" "It's a contract. 2 years. We divorce. I keep the money." "That's insane." "I know." "So what's the problem?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know. It's just It's supposed to be fake, a business arrangement, but today I went to this meeting with her and I watched these people tear her apart, and I couldn't just sit there. I stood up and defended her, and I didn't do it because of the contract. I did it because I wanted to. Marco leaned back, studying him. You care about her. I don't even know her. That's not what I asked. Ethan didn't answer. Marco sighed. Man, you're in deep, Gus. I'm not in anything. It's a job. No, it's not. A job is something you clock in and out of. This is your life. You moved into a new place. You're going to fancy events. You're standing up in boardrooms like you belong there. That's not a job. That's something else. Then what is it? I don't know, but you need to figure it out before it blows up in your face. Ethan finished his beer and ordered another. They talked about other things, the site in Queens, Marco's kids starting Little League, a mutual friend who'd gotten divorced. But Ethan's mind kept drifting back to Victoria. The way she'd looked when the vote failed, like she couldn't believe it was over. The way she'd pulled her hand back when he'd tried to reach for her. By the time he got home, it was late. Lily was asleep and the apartment was dark. Ethan checked his phone. One new message from Victoria. Are you awake? He stared at it for a long time, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then he typed back. Yeah. The response came immediately. Can I call you? Sure. His phone rang 10 seconds later. Hey, he said. Hey. Her voice was quiet, tired. I'm sorry for earlier, for shutting you out. It's fine. It's not. You showed up for me today, and I didn't even thank you properly. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. What you said in that room. She paused, and Ethan heard her take a shaky breath. No one's ever done that for me before. Defended you? Believed in me. Ethan sat down on the couch, the phone pressed to his ear. Victoria, Don't, please. Just let me say this. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. I've spent my entire life trying to prove I deserve to be where I am. And no matter what I do, it's never enough. But today, when you stood up and said those things, I felt like maybe I didn't have to prove anything. Like maybe someone saw me for who I am, not who I'm supposed to be. Ethan's chest felt tight. I meant what I said. I know, that's what scares me. Why? Because this was supposed to be simple, a transaction, and it's not anymore. No, Ethan said quietly, it's not. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The silence stretched, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Victoria said, I should let you go. It's late. Yeah. Good night, Ethan. Good night. The line went dead. Ethan sat there in the dark, staring at the phone in his hand, and realized with absolute certainty that Marco was right. He was in deep, and he had no idea how to get out. 3 weeks passed, and Ethan didn't hear from Victoria. Not a text, not a call, nothing. The money kept hitting his account like clockwork, $277,777.78 on the first of each month, a number so precise it felt algorithmic, but the woman herself had disappeared. He told himself it was better this way. Cleaner. They'd crossed a line that night on the phone, and maybe she'd realized it too. Maybe she was pulling back before things got messy, before someone got hurt, but it didn't feel better. It felt wrong. Lily noticed. Kids always did. Is everything okay with your job? She asked one morning over breakfast. Yeah, why? You seem sad. I'm not sad. You've been checking your phone a lot. Ethan set his coffee down. Just work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it because of the lady? His stomach dropped. What lady? The one from the fancy party. Mrs. Chen told me you got married. Ethan closed his eyes. Of course she did. Yeah, I did. To the lady at the party. Yeah. Lily tilted her head, studying him with that unnerving kid intuition that saw straight through lies. Do you love her? It's complicated. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to answer. Yeah, well, sometimes that's the truth. Lily was quiet for a moment, pushing her cereal around her bowl. Then she said, Mom left because she didn't love us enough. Are you going to leave too? The words hit him like a fist to the chest. What? No, Lily, I'm never leaving you, never. But you got married. To someone I don't even know. What if she makes you leave? Ethan got up, crouched beside her chair, and took her hands. Listen to me. Nobody is ever going to make me leave you. You're the most important person in my life. That's never going to change. Then why did you marry her? Because I thought it would help us. Help you. I don't need help. I just need you. Ethan pulled her into a hug, and she wrapped her small arms around his neck, holding on tight. He could feel her heart beating against his chest, fast and scared, and he hated himself for putting that fear there. I'm sorry, he whispered. I screwed up. It's okay, Dad. No, it's not. She pulled back, looking at him with those serious eyes. Are you going to fix it? I don't know if I can. You always fix things. Not always. Yes, always. That's what you do, sir. Ethan managed to smile, even though his chest felt like it was caving in. Okay, I'll try. Promise? Promise. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat on the couch with his phone in his hand, Victoria's number on the screen. He'd typed out a dozen messages over the past 3 weeks, deleting every single one. But this time, he just pressed call. It rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when she answered, Ethan. Her voice was flat, careful. Hey. Is something wrong, All? No, I just... He stopped, not sure how to say what he needed to say. Can we talk? We are talking. In person. Silence. Victoria, please. Why? Because I need to tell you something, and I can't do it over the phone. Another pause, longer this time. Then, okay, tomorrow, same diner, 7 a.m. I'll be there. She hung up. Ethan sat in the dark, his heart pounding, and wondered if he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life, or if he'd already made it 3 weeks ago. The diner looked the same as it had the first time. Worn booths, chipped counter, the smell of old coffee and older grease. Victoria was already there when Ethan arrived, sitting in the same corner booth, same black coffee in front of her. But she looked different. Thinner, maybe. Or just more tired. Ethan slid into the seat across from her. Thanks for meeting me. You sounded serious. I am. The waitress appeared, poured Ethan coffee without asking, and left. Victoria wrapped her hands around her mug, but didn't drink. So, she said, what do you need to tell me? Ethan took a breath. I can't do this anymore. Her face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. The contract. Yeah, you want out. I want to do the right thing. Victoria's laugh was bitter. The right thing? What's that supposed to mean? It means this whole thing is a lie, and I can't keep lying to my daughter. I can't keep lying to myself. You knew what this was when you signed the contract. I know, and I thought I could handle it. I thought it was just business. But it's not. Not anymore. Victoria set her mug down slowly. What changed? Everything. Nothing. I don't know. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. That night I went to the board meeting when I stood up and said all that stuff. I meant it, and I shouldn't have, because this was supposed to be fake, and now it's not, and I don't know how to untangle it. So you're leaving. I'm saying we need to end this before someone gets hurt. Before you get hurt, you mean? Before we both do. Victoria stared at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked lost. And the money? Keep it. I don't care. Ethan, I mean it. Keep the money. Hell, keep the apartment if you need it for appearances. I'll move back to Astoria. It's fine. It's not fine. You built a life for Lily. You can't just throw that away. I didn't build a life. I built a lie, and she's too smart for that. She asked me this morning if I love you. Victoria went very still. What did you say? I said it's complicated. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They sat in silence. Outside, the city was waking up. Traffic, sirens, the endless churn of people going places they didn't want to go. Finally, Victoria said, I can't let you walk away. You don't have a choice. Yes, I do. The contract, screw the contract, I'm done. Ethan, if you break it now, Richard will use it against me. He'll say the marriage was fake, that I manipulated the board. He'll push for another vote, and this time he'll win. Then let him win.
Victoria's voice cracked. I can't. Why not? Because if I lose the company, I lose everything. My identity, my purpose, everything I've worked for. Then find something else. It's not that simple. Saz. Yes, it is. Ethan leaned forward. You told me you'd disappear if you could, that you're tired of being this, so disappear, walk away, be something else. I don't know how. Neither do I. But at least it'd be real. Victoria's eyes were shining now, tears threatening to spill over. You don't understand. This company is all I have. No, it's not. You have a choice. You've always had a choice. You just keep choosing the thing that's destroying you. And what about you? Her voice was sharp now, angry. You chose the money. You chose to lie to your daughter. You chose to marry someone you didn't know for $5 million. So don't stand there and act like you're better than me. I'm not. I'm just as bad. That's the point. We're both screwed up. We're both doing things that are wrong because we think we don't have another option. But we do. We can stop. And then what? I don't know. That's not good enough. It's all I've got. Victoria stood abruptly, grabbing her coat. I can't do this. Victoria, I need to think. About what? About whether I'm brave enough to lose everything. She walked out, and Ethan sat there alone, staring at his cold coffee, wondering if he'd just set a bomb off or diffused one. 2 days later, Ethan got a call from Victoria's lawyer. The voice on the other end was professional, detached, the kind of tone people use when they're delivering bad news. Mr. Caldwell, I'm calling on behalf of Miss Langford. She's requested that we begin dissolution proceedings for the marriage contract. Ethan's chest tightened. She's ending it? Yes. Per the contract's termination clause, you'll receive a prorated settlement based on the duration of the marriage. Given that it's been approximately 6 weeks, that comes to roughly $416,000. The funds will be transferred within 30 days. I don't want the money. I'm sorry? I said I don't want it. Put it back. Donate it. I don't care. The lawyer paused. Mr. Caldwell, the contract stipulates... I don't care what the contract says. I'm not taking it. That's highly irregular. Good. Tell Victoria I said thanks, but I'm done. He hung up. For the next week, Ethan moved through his days like a ghost. He showed up at the site, nailed boards, went home, made dinner, put Lily to bed. Everything felt flat, like the color had been drained out of the world. Marco noticed. You look like someone died, he said one afternoon, handing Ethan a bottle of water. I feel like someone did. The woman? Yeah. What happened? I walked away. Good. It doesn't feel good. It will. Eventually. Ethan wasn't so sure. That night he got a text from an unknown number. She's gone. Who is this? Jennifer, Victoria's assistant. She resigned this morning, handed in her notice, walked out, didn't tell anyone where she was going. Ethan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. What do you mean she's gone? I mean she quit. The board's in chaos. Richard's already positioning himself as interim CEO, and nobody knows where she is. Did she say anything? Just that she was done, and that if anyone asked, to tell them she said thank you. Ethan sat down hard on the couch, his mind racing. She'd actually done it. She'd walked away. He typed back, Do you know where she went? No. But she left something for you. I can drop it off if you want. Yeah. Please. An hour later, Jennifer showed up at his door with a small envelope. She handed it to him without a word, gave him a look that might have been sympathy or pity, and left. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper folded once. Victoria's handwriting, neat and precise. Ethan, you were right. About everything. I've been holding on to something that was killing me because I was too scared to let go. But you showed me that fear isn't a good enough reason to stay, so I'm letting go. I don't know what comes next, and that terrifies me. But it also feels like the first real breath I've taken in years. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. I'm sorry for putting you in an impossible position, and I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to say this to your face. The company's gone. Richard won.
But I don't care anymore. Because losing something you were holding too tight isn't the same as losing something that mattered.
Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Take care of Lily. She's lucky to have you.
V. Ethan read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. And then he did something he hadn't done in years. He cried. A month passed. Ethan moved back to Astoria, into a smaller place than the Brooklyn apartment, but bigger than the old 1-bedroom. 2 bedrooms, affordable rent, a kitchen that worked. Lily adjusted faster than he expected, complaining only once about the lack of a dishwasher before deciding the new place was fine. Life returned to normal. Or something close to it. Ethan picked up more hours at the site, saved what he could, tried not to think about Victoria, or where she'd gone, or whether she was okay. He failed at that last part. Marco invited him out for a beer one Friday night, and Ethan almost said no. But Lily was at a sleepover, the apartment was too quiet, and he needed the distraction. They ended up at the same dive bar, the same sticky floors, the same jukebox. "You doing okay?" Marco asked. "Yeah, I think so." "You think so?" "I'm trying to be." "That's progress." Ethan took a drink. "I keep thinking about what I said to her, that she should walk away. And then she did. And now I don't know if I helped her or destroyed her. You can't control what other people do, man. You gave her an option. What she did with it, that's on her. But what if she's worse off now? What if she's better?" Ethan didn't have an answer for that. They talked about other things, the site, Marco's kids' baseball game, plans for summer. But Ethan's mind kept drifting. When he got home, there was someone sitting on the steps outside his building, Victoria. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, cut just above her shoulders. She wore jeans and a sweater, no coat despite the cold, and she looked nervous. Ethan stopped a few feet away. "Hey." "Hey, what are you doing here?" "I don't know. She stood, shoving her hands into her pockets. "I've been driving around for 2 hours trying to decide if I should knock on your door." And I'm a coward, so I sat on the steps instead." Ethan almost smiled. "You want to come up?" "Is that okay?" "Yeah." They went upstairs in silence. Ethan unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and gestured for her to sit. Victoria perched on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any second. "You want coffee?" Ethan asked. "No, thank you." He sat down across from her, giving her space. "So, you quit?" "I quit. How's that going?" Victoria laughed, but it was shaky. Terrifying. Liberating, confusing, all of the above. "What are you doing now?" "I don't know. I'm staying with a friend in Connecticut. I've been reading a lot, taking walks, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not Victoria Langford, CEO. Any luck?" "Not yet, but I'm working on it." But they sat in silence for a moment. Then Victoria said, "I read an article about the company yesterday. Richard's running it into the ground. Stocks down 20%. He fired half the leadership team." "I'm sorry. I'm not. It's not mine anymore. And honestly, I don't miss it. Not the way I thought I would." "What do you miss?" She looked at him, and her eyes were soft. "You." Ethan's breath caught. "I know I shouldn't," Victoria said quickly. "I know we barely know each other, and this whole thing was a disaster from the start. But I keep thinking about what you said in that boardroom, and on the phone, and in the diner. And I keep thinking that maybe the only real thing I had in the last 5 years was you." "Victoria, yeah." "I'm not here to ask you for anything," she said. "I just wanted to say thank you for telling me the truth, for not letting me hide, for showing me that there's more to life than holding on to something that's killing you." Ethan didn't know what to say, so he just said, "You're welcome." Victoria stood. "I should go." "Wait." She stopped. Ethan stood too, closing the distance between them. "I thought about you every day for the last month. I told myself I shouldn't, that it was over, that we barely knew each other. But it didn't matter. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being a contract. You became real. Ethan, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it can work. But I know I don't want you to walk out that door without knowing that I care about you. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, you. But Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I care about you too."
So much it scares me. Then stay scared, but stay. She closed the distance, and he pulled her into his arms.
And for the first time in weeks, something in Ethan's chest loosened. They stood there, holding each other, two broken people who'd walked away from everything they thought they needed and found something better in the wreckage.
I don't know how to do this, Victoria whispered. Neither do I. What if we screw it up?
Then we screw it up, but at least it'll be real. She pulled back just enough to look at him. What about Lily? She'll like you, once she gets to know you. How do you know?
Because you're honest, and that's the only thing she cares about. Victoria smiled, and it was the first real smile he'd seen from her. Not polished, not perfect, just real. Okay, she said.
Okay? Let's try Sam. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the kitchen of a house in Queens. Not his house, but one he was helping to renovate, and listened to Lily laugh in the backyard. She was teaching Victoria how to throw a baseball, and Victoria was terrible at it, but she kept trying, and Lily kept laughing, and the sound of it made Ethan's chest ache in the best way. They weren't married anymore. The contract had been dissolved, the paperwork filed, the whole thing officially over. But Victoria came by 3 times a week. She had dinner with them. She helped with homework. She sat on the couch and watched movies with Lily curled up beside her. She was building a new life, slower this time. She'd started consulting for small startups, helping them avoid the mistakes she'd made. She wasn't rich anymore, not billionaire rich, but she was comfortable. And more importantly, she was happy. Ethan was too. It wasn't perfect. They fought sometimes, about small things, about big things. Victoria still struggled with letting go of control, and Ethan still struggled with trusting that good things could last. But they were trying, and that was enough. Marco had asked him once if he regretted it, the contract, the lie, all of it. Ethan thought about it for a long time before answering. No, he'd said finally, because it brought me to the truth, vice. And that was the thing people didn't tell you about mistakes. Sometimes they didn't destroy you. Sometimes they broke you open just enough to let something real grow in the cracks. That night, after Lily was in bed, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't walked into the wrong restaurant? She asked. All the time. And I think I would have missed out on the best mistake I ever made. Victoria smiled, lacing her fingers through his. Me too. They sat in silence. 2 people who'd lost everything they thought mattered and found something better in each other. Not a fairy tale. Not a perfect ending. Just 2 imperfect people choosing honesty over comfort, freedom over security, and each other over everything else. And in the end, that was enough. Because the best things in life aren't the ones you plan for. They're the ones you stumble into when you're brave enough to walk away from the wrong thing and toward the truth. Even if the truth is messy. Even if it's hard. Even if it costs you everything. Because some things are worth losing everything for, and some people are worth finding.